Let's take a closer look now at President-elect Trump's pick to run the CIA. For our hour special on the U.S. military, How We Fight, I spoke with Kansas Congressman Mike Pompeo, a member of the House Select Committee on Intelligence. And I started with asking him his thoughts on President Obama's Iran nuclear deal.
We're a year out from the agreement, and every single action the Iranians have taken has been bolder and starker than the ones they took before the agreement. You can see it in their continued development of their missile program. They've now received air defense equipment from the Russians. They continue to wreak havoc in the Gaza Strip and in Beirut and in Iraq. The Iranians are on the march, not slowing down following this.
Has the support for Hezbollah or Hamas dropped off at all?
Not at all.
Modified?
None. If anything, greater.
Support for Bashar al-Assad changed?
None.
Military alliance with Bashar al-Assad changed?
None.
Military alliance with Putin's Russia been moderated?
Stronger.
Fast boat harassment, other actions, has that changed dramatically?
Increased, more resources applied to the antagonism.
And then there's the seizure of Americans. Has that changed at all since the Iran nuclear deal?
It has not. We paid $1.7 billion in ransom, and they have taken 3 Americans since that time.
Since that time?
That's correct.
Is there anything, Congressman, that is good out of this deal?
Brett, I can't think of a thing.
Not one.
I can't think of a thing that has put America in a better position as a result of this deal.
And you're not just saying that from a political ideology standpoint.
No, Brett, I'd be happy if you've got something that you're thinking of or something that's been proffered by the administration. I'd be happy to consider it. But as I look at the Middle East and at the world today, that has resulted in from the time that the negotiations began until the time the deal was done and until today, I think Iran is more powerful, puts the world in more risk, and I can't think of a single benefit that has been derived from the JCPOA.
Do some of these Gulf nations have a decision to make between siding with the U.S. or siding with Iran?
It's a little more complicated than that. What they're really hoping is that the next leader of the United States will frankly return to the traditional understanding that what we're shooting for in the Middle East is to ensure that our ally Israel can continue to exist and that we can create a stable mechanism so that opportunity for really bad things to come out of the Middle East and harm us here in the United States will be decreased. I think they're hoping that they'll find a different partner come January of next year.
What do you make of Donald Trump's assertion that the Iran nuclear deal is disastrous and one of the first things he'd do if elected would be renegotiate it?
Mr. Trump has it right. That deal is a disaster. I don't think there's any renegotiation of that deal that makes any sense. What America ought to do, with a new president, ought to talk to the Iranians and explain to them those agreements are off. There's a new sheriff in town. We're going to handle this differently. You are not going to have the capacity to do the things that you've done and convince our European allies that that's the right approach as well.
When President Obama first took office, the U.S. military was seen as an unchallenged power in the Middle East. 8 years later now, how do you think the U.S. military is viewed in the Middle East? Oh,
in the capitals of the Middle East, American power is viewed as diminished. It's not that our soldiers, sailors, and airmen aren't just as good, and our military capacity to inflict battlefield success isn't just as good as it was, but our willingness is what's being challenged. Our commitment to the Middle East, to ensure stability in the Middle East, is being questioned in every capital throughout the Middle East.
After the last 8 years, what will the next president inherit with the U.S. military?
He or she is going to inherit the finest military in the world. Make no mistake about that. But there's an incredible amount of rebuilding that's got to take place. We've deferred a lot of maintenance and equipment, and we also have a lot of places where we have to go reassure our allies that our military is prepared to support them, not fight in their place, but support them all around the world.
Do you trust what could be a President Trump to do the right things when it comes to the U.S. military?
I do trust Mr. Trump to do the right things for the United States military. I am convinced that he will bring around him real leaders who understand the traditions and the importance and how to create an effective fighting force, and that American soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines will be far better off in a Trump administration than they have been in these past 8 years.
Obviously a couple weeks before the election, but pending Senate confirmation, you're looking there at the next CIA director.